Al-Qaeda has issued a brand new terror threat against the United States.
The terror group's leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri, calling on supporters to kill Westerners, specifically Americans, in lone wolf-style attacks.
Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us live with the breaking details. Good morning, Catherine. What can you tell us about this video?
Well, at this hour, Anna, this audio tape is being reviewed by the U.S. intelligence community. It's 36 minutes in length, and an audio message. I would sort of caution people there's never been a fake tape from Al-Qaeda in the past. And in the message, the call is for Muslims in the United States and Western nations to launch. It's sort of a new variation of the lone wolf attack, what I would call sort of a standing order for terrorism. So to take the training that they've received overseas and then to launch attacks in their home country.
What does this say, Catherine, about the changing face of Al-Qaeda and terrorism? Instead of, it seems like gone are the large-scale shock and awe style attacks. What does this say to you?
Well, specifically in the tape, Zawahiri calls for attacks that are similar to what we saw in France in January of this year, the Charlie Hebdo attack, where two brothers, Saeed and Sharif Kouachi, had training from Al-Qaeda in Yemen about a couple years before, and then went home. And once they were home, it was up to them to decide the time and the place and the method of the attack to have the greatest success. So these are attacks where there's no phone call, there's no email, there's no text, there's nothing on social media telling them today is the day that we're pulling the trigger on this operation. It's left entirely to the independence of these radical Islamist operatives. And these operations are that much harder to disrupt because there are no communications between them and, we'll say, the mothership or the lead organization, in this case Al-Qaeda in Yemen or Al-Qaeda core in Pakistan.
How did Zawahiri disseminate this message? How would people read it?
It was posted, it's an audio message. It was posted online, and we're seeing this morning what we typically see now in these cases, which is kind of a whack-a-mole situation. It gets passed around on Twitter, then taken down, and then it pops up on other sites. I would emphasize to people in this particular tape, and this is the standard we now see with Zawahiri, that it's audio, and there's just a still image, sort of like a photograph of him. Okay. And this doesn't provide as much information about location as we used to see in the old videotapes, where you could see from the terrain, sometimes the vegetation. It would give the intelligence community a better sense or a better handle on where they're located. But again, this is sort of the new evolution, the kind of standing order, no direction to act. The mission has been blessed, and it's up to the operatives, whether they're like the Kouachi brothers or, as Zawahiri mentions in the tape, the Tsarnaev brothers, launch the attack at the time that you think you will have the greatest chance for success.
Right, so we've seen it before. Go get trained and then go home on your home
Correct.
soil and carry it out however you want, whenever you want, and under this direction here from Zawahiri. This seems particularly troubling. Last week I was covering the Homeland Security report that just came out saying that homegrown violent jihad cases have tripled over the last 5 years, and that the FBI has opened investigations in all 56 of their field offices in all 50 states. So how vigilant do Americans need to be without overreacting and living in fear?
Well, it's hard for me to sort of tell people how to live their lives, but what the department is saying is to keep your eyes and ears open. If I could just speak to the data that you mentioned, which I think is extremely important. This administration has talked about how the likelihood of a large-scale 9/11 attack has greatly diminished in the last 14 years, and we have not had another attack on that scale. But the subtext here is that there is an arrest in this country now almost every week for someone who's an alleged member of ISIS or Al-Qaeda trying to launch what would be described as a smaller scale attack. These kinds of attacks have a very sort of cancerous or corrosive effect because they undermine the confidence of individuals, and they also typically attack the military as a target or events of national significance. So it's a form of psychological warfare as well.
But, Catherine, you bring us something fascinating, which, I mean, I'm comforted by the fact that they're capturing these guys, because without the chatter that we saw pre-9/11, planning back and forth text messages, and now they're being encouraged to kind of go on radio silence, says something about our intelligence community that they're able to get these guys with no chatter.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that point. The FBI director has been, James Comey, has been very outspoken about this, the challenge of encryption. So these operatives in the United States or sympathizers make contact with ISIS overseas, and then ISIS redirects them to encrypted communications, leaving the FBI effectively dark. That's why we saw this rash of arrests leading up to July 4th, and as the director confirmed, there was a credible plot timed for July 4th. So their sort of MO now is to pick up people on lesser charges before they get close to acting, because they're not sure at what point they're going to lose them. They're going to effectively have gone dark. But the bottom line is that the likelihood of a large-scale attack has really diminished. But what has come in its place is just an explosion in these smaller-scale plots here in the United States, and it's particularly acute in Europe. And one would never want to minimize the impact of the murder of a dozen or 24 individuals. And quite frankly, in France, as we saw just in recent weeks, when those 3 Americans took down that shooter, you could have had dozens of people killed,
yes,
attacked on a major form of transportation. And then again, the economic impact, because that is Al-Qaeda's main goal, is to cripple us economically in order to bring us onto their side.
Catherine Herridge joining us live by phone. Thanks a lot, Catherine, for that.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Gosh, that's terrifying. And I got to say, in light of this threat, which is obviously real, the plan to import 10,000 people from the Syrian civil war into the United States seems pretty reckless.
How do you make sure you don't get the bad eggs?
Well, you
with the
can't.
good?
I mean, it's really insane.